Chapter 14, A Truth. I did it for you, Koume whined, a desperation in her voice that Ganondorf hadn't heard from her before. His phantom screeched, it lingered between them, a shield protecting him from her. She was the reason, the very reason his own people thought he didn't deserve the crown. She started this, and inspired Adira's hate for him. Koume was the reason Jerusa was dead. She was faltering, panting with fear. He just stood there trying to process this unending treachery. There was no comprehending it, no way to justify why his own mother would do such a reckless thing. He watched her drop to her knees in a panic. I did it to make you strong, Ganondorf. Yes, Rauru ordered the attempts on your life to stop. I thought it a rumor, but the risk dwindled to nothing, and I realized it was true. But you needed to grow into your power. In order to do that, you needed to be faced with danger. I had to create that danger for your own growth and strength. I've always wanted you to be strong. Ganondorf scoffed. Strong. You created fear within my people with a fake prophecy, and within me as a young child. I only grew strong because of my own power, my own innate malice. You had nothing to do with that. I had everything to do with that. I made it so your own people wanted you dead. I sent that Hylian after you when you were 10 years old. You destroyed him with barely a flick of your wrist. I started a chain reaction that made you stronger, that made you want to be stronger. I never wanted to do you any actual harm. She rose and attempted to move past the phantom, but it mirrored her movements. Please, my son. I am not your son. You took me in, raised me, yes, but with betrayal as your guide. There were other ways to grow my strength, Koume. She didn't answer, frozen, drowning in an unrivaled shame. Did Kotake know? He asked, fearing the answer. His quiet, loving mother couldn't have been involved in this, right? Koume hung her head. Only me. It seemed she was done defending her actions. She knew it was fruitless to try. Relief flooded him. At least one of his mothers was true. But Koume, she would have to learn why no one should cross him. He pulled his phantom back inside, and the room returned to normal. He stepped toward Koume, who couldn't look him in the eye. Taking a handful of her tunic at her neck, he forced her chin upward, forcing her to look at the man she forever saw as just a boy. She would see him as he truly was. Your actions are treason. The penalty is death. She closed her eyes, whether in denial or acceptance, he didn't know. He imagined her neck snapping like Adira's mother, wondering what it would feel like to watch. Would it fill him with fear again? Would it be even worse this time? He couldn't reconcile it in his mind. He could only see the fear on her face. He wasn't ready. You will never second-guess me again, he hissed. You will do everything I say, follow every command without question, without hesitation. If I tell you to jump from a cliff to your death, you will do it. Koume nodded shakily. and Ganondorf saw tears fall from her eyes for the very first time in his life. Chapter 15. An Attack. Betrayal. Disloyalty. Death. His chest ached with it, the remnants of his life, the constricting deluge of sickening realizations that he must live with forever. Jerusa, Adira, Koume, King Rauru and his useless reign. They were each a stepping stone, a rung on the ladder to Ganondorf's destined rule, and anyone who got in his way would perish. He stood now upon a bluff in Gerudo Canyon, directly across from the Great Plateau, where Hylian soldiers wandered and guarded. Dormo had returned to Kakariko village with orders to stand by. Once this deed was done, Ganondorf would need every asset he could get. The Gerudo he trusted stood behind him. Koume was also present, but only so he could keep his eyes on her every move. She would do nothing without his knowing. Not for a long while. She stood stoic and unfeeling, either afraid to show emotion or unwilling to. He wasn't sure which. She wore a golden mask, hiding her face, a choice she made for herself. She claimed it was part of her penance, that she would no longer show her face to Ganondorf. Not until he trusted her again. Kotake stood beside her, glancing between them, surely hoping to calm the waters, but it was not possible. She had also donned a golden mask in solidarity with her sister. Kotake's loyalty knew no bounds. Ganondorf did not argue when she told him she would wear it. She could act as loyal as she wanted toward Koume. He didn't care. He only cared about his future now. A strange feeling came upon him as he stood, his Gerudo soldiers awaiting his order. He had been so confident of his fate thus far, so sure that each action he had taken would lead to his ultimate victory. But what if he was wrong? It was the first time he had questioned it since he was an insecure young boy, taunted by his peers and misunderstanding the power raging within him. Koume had driven so rigidly into his mind his prophesied future that he'd barely wondered its accuracy. But her treachery gave him pause now. The Gerudo were always so sure of themselves, so unabashedly convinced that their history was sealed in veracity. But what if it wasn't? Long ago, in his childlike curiosity and ambling, he would have asked his mothers, and they would have assured him of his innate strength. Questioning that now would only take him to weak places. His fate may yet prove to betray him, like every other outside influence in his life, yet he still wanted it so, more than anything, even after Jerusa, even despite Jerusa. Some would call Ganondorf evil, and perhaps they were right. Perhaps he should just lean into it. He looked back at his people, standing tall, with his arms crossed, his eyes narrowed and his phantom within trembling with an unmatched fury. He smiled, slowly. It was time to accept everything. Time to accept whatever fate was to be given him. Hyrule will bow down before me. he said under his breath and raised a hand in the air, signaling for Jiri to call forth a company of ferocious, bloodthirsty Molduga. Epilogue. 6 months after the sealing of Ganondorf. The concoction bubbled like thick, hot oil, a lewd scent emanating from it, causing Kotake to gag. She watched as her sister stirred it, savoring every turn, as though she thought she could will it to work. Perhaps she could. After all, Koume was practiced at a lot of arcane arts, a deadly foe to anyone who crossed her, and an intelligent warrior. Kotake trusted that whatever plans Koume had would probably come to pass just as she wanted them to. But after their son was bested by the usurper king, after he was apparently sealed away without any hope of returning, Koume spiraled into a mania. She desperately clawed through prophetic papers in the library underground, searching for more prophecy, denying any concept that the Gerudo could have been mistaken about their future. When she found nothing, she turned to the black arts instead. Kotake had tried to reason with her, unsuccessfully of course. Magical arts such as these were forbidden for a reason, but Koume was simply reacting to their loss, grieving in her own way. So Kotake gave up on trying to change her reaction, and instead learned right along with her. They studied the black arts for months, gaining knowledge that would plunge the average person into insanity. But they had strong minds, Koume especially. They learned and they listened and they waited. And now Koume silently stirred a potion. A potion that would give each of them life. Immortal life. There were several ways to accomplish this, many of which the sisters had no access to. Secret stones in particular. But this potion, they discovered in an ancient text buried in the recesses of their city's underground ruins. It required a morbid array of ingredients, including the heart of Azora. When Koume had brought the heart to Kotake with shining pride, all she could think of was the time they took Ganondorf with them to Zora's domain. He was just a boy. Just a boy. Kotake wiped away a tear as Koume explained victory with a final turn of her ladle. The liquid turned suddenly burgundy, a sign that the deed was done. Koume ladled the potion into 2 small jars, from which they would drink and become forever alive, as long as they escaped murder, of course. She had been arduously agonizing over Ganondorf's defeat. She couldn't accept it, not now, not ever. It didn't matter what she had found in the depths after he was born. It didn't matter that the prior King of Gerudo had been buried with it. The true prophecy. The one she had told Adira's family about. It had been real, yes, but she had only used it to her advantage, never dreamed that it would actually come into being. She had, in fact, actively worked against it. So now, when Kotake hadn't been looking, she had tossed it into the potion, the very parchment boasting the secret prophecy that Ganondorf, the Demon King, would be sealed away, and the Gerudo would chart a new path toward allegiance to a monarchy. It was their very destruction, their betrayal of the gods themselves. Koume did not defy tradition. She wrested it. But she had burned that prophecy into their potion, and in that way, they would have control over any further implications it may pose. One day, their son would awaken. One day, Rauru's success would fade away. One day, Ganondorf would be king.